Hi, my name is Hannah, and today we're interviewing David Francis. A national of the UK and the US, David has 4 decades of experience in finance in New York, London, and Singapore. He is a financial advisor. Today he gives us his view on business and economic trends as the curve flattens and we emerge into a post-pandemic world.
This podcast channel is about you, successful international entrepreneurs, successful expats, successful investors. Sponsored by HCJ.tax.
Okay. So, David, thank you for your time today. I know you're a busy guy. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is David Francis. I'm of mixed background. My father, who's passed away, he was from originally old slave country, North Carolina.
Oh.
And my mother was from St. Lucia. And one of my grandparents is from Martinique. So there's a bit of English in there. There's a bit of, there's a few things going in there. And I was born in London.
Okay. All right, fantastic. And professionally?
Professionally, I've been in finance now for about close to 4 decades.
Wow.
So my first foray in the financial world was straight after my first degree in '84. And I went to New York, found myself working as a trader for a bank called Oppenheimer. That was amazing. And then I got a headhunter call from somebody who said they wanted to put me in front of someone it was quite a small concern then compared to what it is now, a certain Goldman Sachs.
Wow.
Yeah, so I wasn't that keen because I was having so much fun and I really learned all about, the raw end of selling. And I also went in at a very difficult time because the US is just coming out of a recession. I was one of the few people of color there, but I was just very, very young and keen, and I think they saw that and helped support me. So I went to Goldman, and as soon as I got there, I realized it was a terrible fit. And there was one senior manager he had every IST. He was sexist, misogynist, everything, and this is to really treat people like, and I was still quite young and cocky and a bit chippy myself, so I always said, if he ever speaks to me like that, and if you know any people from Goldman, there are a type and they really like toe the line and they're like, oh, what about your bonuses? So as luck would have it, we had a situation, and then I went away. I was told to go and rethink my career, and then I went away. Had a friend in Houston. I said, I'm coming over for the long weekend, and I never went back. And then after I managed to get an into the World Bank, which kind of fitted in with what I studied because my main passion is development economics. So I managed to get a gig there. And I remember at the interview, the guy saying, well, have you heard of the OECS? I went, yeah, the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States. And the guy's like, wow. He said, well, we have a project and we're looking to basically send over somebody there on secondment. And have you ever heard of Castries, St. Lucia?
Wow.
I was like, oh, this is, So I was based in Castries, St. Lucia, because that was the HQ for the OECS in the Caribbean at the time.
Wow.
And my job was to float around Latin America and the Caribbean, identifying community type projects. And then I'd go back and then try and, seek funding for those projects. Amazing. The only thing that wasn't amazing was my salary. I basically became a public servant. But that was great. So I was there for a couple of years. Then I hit the glass ceiling where I couldn't go any further unless I had a master's. So I went back to the UK. I did an MSc in international relations with a view of going back to the World Bank. But after I did that, I got seduced in the city of London, back into trading and selling and buying, and that was quite interesting. And kind of reason why I say it's interesting is I started a week before Black Monday.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of the emotions and a lot of deja vu.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't know, because I was newer and fresher and less seasoned, everything seemed a lot scarier, actually. I know this is a lot more global, and it's health. This is people's health we're talking about, which is different paradigm. But it seemed a lot scarier. Like, we really didn't know, will markets rebound? How will they rebound? What will it be like afterwards? And like a lot of these things, that's where you get your deepest learning, really. So yes, I did that, and then about 93, 94, I just had a complete burnout, and I just stepped out of the financial sector completely. And I did a lot of other stuff, cool stuff, voluntary work with youth organizations, a few black groups in the UK, and I got involved for the first time into a bit of entrepreneurship. And then fast forward to 2006, I had a call from an old trader friend who said, "Dave, I'm having a bit of problems recruiting. I've got this this project where I've got to get clients who are into spread betting and upgrade them up to sell it, buying US shares and CFDs and that sort of thing." Yeah. Okay. So I said, "Where are you?" He said, "I'm at E-Trade." I said, "Well, I'm not really into the financial game anymore. I'm a bit burnt out. I'm doing other things." He said it would only be for a few months, and then he told me how much you'll pay me, and I was like, "Okay." So I joined Neil for a bit, and within 2 weeks, I remember one Tuesday morning, really early, one of the senior managers said, "Have you seen Neil?" I went, "No." "Have you heard from him?" I went, "No." "Okay." Anyway, Neil just went MIA.
Wow.
Yeah, and I took over the whole shebangle. Yeah.
Wow.
And then realized, back to the old corporate world, remind me of Sachs, the moving, the pawn to here, the bishop, all the politics and the extremely long hours. I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. I'm really not enjoying this. And as a personal aside, I was seeing an Arab lady, and I'd converted with a view to get married. And she was doing really long hours. She's in the health field, and I was doing long hours at Canary Wharf. And we just started to go like this. So during that time, I had another headhunter call from a young lady, and she said, "Oh, hi, David, we've heard great things about you. There's this place called Singapore. Have you heard of it?" I went, "Yeah." But all I knew about Singapore, I was so ignorant then, was Singapore airline advertisements. Yeah. They said, "Well, anyway, right now it's a financial hub, but the main hub in Southeast Asia is Hong Kong, and they want to take some of the gloss out there, so they're trying to attract professionals out there. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Not really. I'm kind of committed to E-Trade." And he said, "Do you mind if I keep in touch?" And every time somebody from Singapore came from this certain organization, they'd see me and we'd have a chat. And I remember by the third, this was over 18 months, the last guy I saw was the CEO. He was very smart. All he spoke about was the lifestyle. He said, "Well, David, how long did it take you to get here? And you just work over there to get here, and you have to go through traffic." I said, "Well, in Singapore, you leave your air conditioned office, you jump in the air conditioned cab." And he was just like, "Yeah, he just painted this." And in that time, myself and my personal situation, we'd hit an impasse. I just thought, I can't really see how we're going to go ahead with that. So the timing was really good. So I said, hey, I'll give it a go. So I came to Singapore the end of 2007. My job then,
yeah,
quite funny, was working on tax.
okay.
Yeah. So I was working with a really, really smart guy. He had a doctorate in comparative tax systems.
Wow.
And our job was to help people on an individual basis. As you know, people, whilst they're in Asia offshore, they accumulate assets. But when they go back to their country of origin, it's a different thing with their home country, their inland revenue. The teeth of inland revenue there are quite sharp.
Yes.
And similarly with corporates, if they're looking to repatriate some or all of their profits back to their country of origin, again, we would help with things that you're more familiar than I with, like transfer pricing and offshore places like Cayman, etc. So that seemed good on the surface, but we had a real, I wouldn't say ego, it's just personality. He was originally from the Royal Navy, old English gentleman, and I'm still this, kid from North London with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. So things got really, really bad, and I was about to go back to the UK, and then the CEO said, "Why don't you do the exams and become a financial advisor?" So I was like, really? What, selling savings plans and insurance? It didn't really appeal to me intellectually. Anyway, I did the exams, the basic ones, did a couple of deals, and then I went away for 3 months. I went, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
So then I came back, I think it was like August 2008, and then a couple of months later, what happened? Yeah. The world fell apart. Yeah. And then suddenly I was given all these orphan clients, and I was the one to go and deliver the bad news and try and manage the relationship. And somehow we got through that. And around 2013, I realized I had a pretty hefty bevy of clients. And in that time, the whole, as you know, regulatory landscape had changed quite significantly. So there's a lot of talk even then that the small players with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a small company, they weren't going to last much longer. So I started to look around for a bigger company, and I ran into this Chinese gentleman, David Tang, very interesting guy, a bit edgy, very not Singaporean, had a temper, but super smart. And he just sold me on his dream. He was working for a company called Finexis at the time. And his whole thing is he wanted to build an expatriate arm because most of the advisors there were local. So I joined him, and about 2017, just before Christmas, he said to the team that he'd been looking around for quite a while, and because Finexis made him a lot of promises they hadn't kept, and he's come across another company called Synergy, who we feel a lot more aggressive, a lot more in keeping with what he's trying to do. And we can join him or we can stay. So I wanted to stay because I remember when I transferred from the small expat company to Finexis, what a ball ache that was, because clients get very jittery. It takes forever to onboard them. So I was very reluctant. So he said, David, you can stay, but if you do, there's no guarantee that they will renew your employment pass. So I decided to follow him to Synergy. Okay. So it's a long-winded answer, but essentially we take care of people's financial livelihood sometimes. Like I'm in a team of 35 and 6 of them are expats, and I head the expat team. Now, if I have somebody say, Dave, I want this product, I will just pass them off to a team member. I tell them that's not my job. My job, and I find a lot more interesting, is sitting down with me and you today and you telling me what you want, where you want to get to and then I'll talk to you and try and find out how we can get you there or get you some of the way. And that may involve a number of instruments or different types of, solutions to help get you there. But just to sell you a product, that's not really my MO. And in that, I find that 80% of what I do will be in the area of investments and 20% insurance. And in the investment space, again, I tell clients from the off that I'm not a micromanager or a fund manager. I don't get paid for that, right? I'm a financial coach. And there will be funds or sectors or asset classes that we may feel at a given time based on your appetite for risk, how long you want to invest for, and most importantly, your objective. We will look at, different types of funds. But if things suddenly go the way they have, right? We have backup and infrastructure to help advise, but my job is not a day trader or buy, sell, that sort of thing. Those days are gone. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm a financial advisor.
Fantastic. So I think at this point in time, you're probably one of the most perfect people to speak with, because most of the topics would revolve around what's going on in the marketplace. So having said that, we are in an unprecedented environment. What do you see as being the light at the end of the tunnel? What happens next? What do you see?
Right. I'm a bit of a history buff. So times like these, no one has a crystal ball here. So you just got to look back at other crises. I've read a lot about the Spanish flu. Obviously, I've lived through the Great Recession, Black Monday, 9/11.
Yeah.
But this one is very different, and it caught. There's a guy on a group chat, and he said that Ray Dalio is his mentor, and I've read about him, a super successful hedge fund guy in the Bobby Axel mold.
Yeah.
And even he got caught out. He got caught out. I don't know if it's instinct or just when things were going a bit wobbly sometimes last year and the year before, I had a lot of clients like, Dave, what should I do? What should I do? And I was like, oh, there's going to be a recession. I was like, I'm not sure. But when the beginning of, we had a bit of a ropey period in December, then things started to go up, and in January it just went up and up and up and up. I just couldn't really, what's all this about? So long story short, I took a lot of clients, I made them take their profit out, or their recent profit, and put it into cash.
Well done.
And that's done me a lot of favors. Yeah. So the end, I suppose the easiest answer is things are still gonna get a lot worse. I heard some figures from the US today and UK, really, really bad. In Southeast Asia, we're not so bad, but as you know, Singapore, we're going through this second wave. But when the end comes, which some are saying probably 3 to 6 months, could be even longer. No one's sure what that's going to do. I mean, supply chains are already FECK'd, but now it's spilling over into demand because people are, losing their jobs and there's a lot of uncertainty. But I think from a work-life balance, things are and they're already changing quite radically. And I can see the speed of digitalization will only increase exponentially. And then that will have, throw up other questions like, what is the meaning of employment? What is work? You know, how do you work? Should you work at home every day? If you do work at home every day, like me, I work in a team, and financial advisory is classified as an essential service, so I can go to work, even though we have social distancing measures, etc., etc. But I only tend to go to work now if I have team members having a breakdown on their social work, or I've got to sign something off. But usually I'm at home now. But yeah, I've had this conversation with my boss. If we all stay at home, what about a thing called culture? How do you breathe that? You know. And then on the macro side, if you look at the real naysayers, you got to say, what's going to happen to bonds? Well, bonds, the yields are pretty bogus anyway, right? What's going to happen to stocks? Probably still going to be, depending on the sector, going to be overvalued. What about gold? Great, it's a great story, but it doesn't yield any dividends, and you only really get something if and when you sell it. And then the area that fascinates me the most, property. So if we stick to the argument that people's working lives and the way they work will change, maybe not everybody's working from home, because that would be impractical, but let's say more people work from home. Is there a need for the big office space, in the CBD? Yeah. If that happens, what happens to demand? If demand goes down, what will happen to the property prices? And then, as you know, that drip feed its way into the residential sector. And then throws up another existentialist argument about ownership. This home that you own, do you really own it? I mean, based on the fact that, I'm sidetracking, but yeah, these are the things I think we'll have to face. But for my job, I'm an optimist. We've never been busier. Like, we have a very smart guy. He's probably, you've heard of IFAS, but I've heard you've told your American clients, stay away from that. Stay away. Well, rightly so. Now, this guy, he's written books. He's been in the business a long time, Singaporean, and he has something like 20 million under management. And he said, in times like these, you're going to have your clients in 3 different sectors. You're going to have 20% are negative, jittery. They just want to sell. You got 20% who are quite positive, quite confident. They'll more than likely want to buy. Right? And then you got the mass in the middle, 60%, who are neutral. So he said, our job as advisors, or good advisors, is to get the 20% not to sell, and the 60% get them to buy. Not a lot. Get them to buy. So since middle of February, I've got over 4.5 mil extra in AUM. Requests for people wanting to do life insurance has just gone ballistic. So I wouldn't say I'm hoping, because I've been in this job long enough now to realize that the people who are disingenuous, you get found out. So it's all about people's needs, and after a while, people can tell the so-called good people. So I think that hopefully people will want to buy things more on need rather than want. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the macro trends. So definitely remote work, and that is here to stay. And what I see this crisis doing, it's not going to create anything. It's not a magic wand. It's not going to pull something out of thin air. What it will do is exacerbate trends that were already in play. So remote work was already a thing, so it'll blow up, right? Now, what that means is obviously yes, commercial real estate, and the lowest hanging fruit would be the co-working spaces, which WeWork kind of showed us that the emperor had no clothes, and there's been a lot of other companies that were riding that wave. We don't need to call names, but there are quite a few here in Asia as well, and they're all going to feel it because what their model was, what their investment thesis was, it was weak in the first place.
Yeah.
But now, come on, it's not going to happen. So that slowdown is real. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
And commercial real estate, again, it was already at an inflection point, and in some markets, it was already weakening. It's going to accelerate. And as you said, that has a knock-on effect on residential real estate. And a hot topic is Hong Kong. I did this with our head of the office in Hong Kong yesterday. And of course, Hong Kong equals real estate. So a chunk of the conversation was about it. And again, using Hong Kong as a case study, both commercial and lagging, residential was already softening. So it will continue to do so. So that's real. And then, of course, it has it for other implications for other investment classes like REITs and stuff like that. But it is what it is. Now, what I wanted to do is pause on that and take advantage of the fact that you've been, as a Westerner in Asia, a so-called expat, for an extended period of time. And I've only been here for 7 years. And what I have seen is definitely a shift in the number of Western expats becoming less significant, less important. And there's still a movement of people, there's still global mobility, but I'm seeing a lot of inter-Asian movement as opposed to Westerners coming out here. Asian countries, talent moving from jurisdiction or from market to market. Are you seeing that too? And what do you think are the implications of that?
Definitely. As an adjunct to your previous point, though, another thing, I think people question about traveling as well.
Yeah.
The necessity to, do you really need to take all those, those plane trips?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, I think hopefully what this will show us is our interconnectivity, and not only with people but also with nature.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping like more sustainability and conservation. But in answer to your direct question, I felt it quite appreciably in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I've lost anywhere between 5 and 10% of expatriate clients who've left Singapore for a variety of reasons. Some have just come to that point where they moved on somewhere. Others, it's maybe the children. Others are just a bit fed up. They want a different experience. And as you know, in Singapore, the employment pass is becoming as valuable as PR. And I think I know the why. The implications, I'm not so sure, but the why is, if you look at Singapore, it's a youngish country, and this goes to my whole development economics. I find it's quite fascinating. So in terms of their economic trajectory, they're kind of coming out of their adolescence. So their need for senior level expatriates has reduced, because a lot of them can do those jobs that they used to, remember the old rolling contracts expats used to get? Yes. So yeah, unless you're in the area of science, or the whole thing now is fintech, and where will that be after this whole pandemic? It's a lot tougher in terms of the expat mix. The implications, I hope that the negative, because as you know, wherever we are in the world, I think it's human nature, there are prejudices. And one of the things that we all love about Singapore is the cosmopolitan nature, and the fact that it's almost like a fulcrum or a gateway where East meets West.
Absolutely.
So I hope it doesn't get drawn right back into the to the East. Maybe culturally, but not when it comes to ease of business and everybody being able to speak English, and just be a real beacon to lesser developing nations. In the Caribbean, I have more intelligent questions about Singapore than I'll ever get when I go to New York or London. It's quite fascinating. The implications are, I still feel there's a need for expats. There'll be a different type of expats, and I've alluded to a couple of the areas: fintech, science, obviously, education. But even in my industry, the levels in terms of educational and your CPD, and just the financials as well, it's a lot tougher. But for the implications, will Singapore become less competitive? I'm not sure. I mean, going back to the Hong Kong thing, I met former alumni, LSE alumni, last year, and he said already Beijing are predicting that Shanghai will be their New York, and Hong Kong will be their Toronto. So if you look at that analogy or metaphor, Singapore might, with the expats or not, they might be a good, good recipient of that. A lot of the business that would go to Hong Kong may come here.
And it already is.
Yeah.
So I mean, definitely when Hong Kong was handed over in '97, they were like nearly 33% of China's GDP, and now they're probably around 3%.
Yeah.
So, but Hong Kong is growing, but it's growing as a city in China rather than an international city.
Yeah.
The percentage of the population that are Westerners or international, I mean, they're still international, but very Asian and very China focused, and naturally so. And as that has happened, Singapore has been the most significant beneficiary, whereas before one could have argued that there were two international financial centers in Asia. I think it's safe to argue that there's just one. As to what the implications of that are, yes, it's going to be more competitive to get into Singapore, and they can cherry pick the best of what they're looking for, which is only fair. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And that has implications for a number of things, and for a number of us, because I'm on an employment pass as well, who Singapore may not think to be at the right level that they're looking for, then we'd have to look elsewhere. But okay, so let's look at Asia in general. Now, there's been, and again, pointing out that the virus hasn't created anything. It has exacerbated what was already there. There was already a decline in the Asian economies. China's growth was slowing significantly. Where we are in Southeast Asia, the countries that have piggybacked on the success of China, all the way down to Australia and New Zealand. So all the commodity exporters who were riding the wave of China demand in China. China slowed down, everyone slowed down. So and then we had just the slowing growth in China, and then we had the trade war, and now we've had this disruption to the global supply chain, which has meant that the idea of China being the manufacturer to the world is now being challenged, with beneficiaries like Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and so on. And then within that, there's economic nationalism that created Brexit, that created Trump, that created Duterte, that created this movement that has been global. So now there's a resistance in Europe and definitely in the US to investment from China, from China's state enterprises, or the big Chinese successful firms, especially in technology and engineering and so on. And I'm seeing that leading to a larger push towards a nationalism, an economic nationalism, perhaps we have not seen since the 1930s. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, they say in times of uncertainty, people, they'd rather someone who is more absolute than wishy-washy. So, they don't really care too much about the politics. But if you can show me a definitive way forward, I may not back you, but I'll probably give you more more headspace than in the past. Again, I'm a big believer in humans. We have the capacity to overcome and be our better selves. So I think this may happen for a short period after things settle down, but I believe there'll be a reaction to it. And
a reaction in which direction, though?
It'll become more centrist. I think now, things are going too far right. Many levels. And I actually think long-term Brexit will be a good thing, both from a political argument to economic realities, because they'll either fast forward the breakup of the EU or strengthen it, and they will learn why such a big player within the European context, why do they want to leave? We probably don't have enough time to discuss that. I think that if you look at Brexit, it was already happening before the Olympics. And if you look at Hong Kong, everywhere you look, it's all the same. It's a disparity of wealth that's causing this
so global inequality.
Yes,
I see.
And then you got to, like a lot of Americans who I listen to, they say Donald Trump, a lot of it was a kind of a two-finger vote. He may not be the best, but look what we've had in the past, and we're worse off. So when that experiment has passed, and the world will be slightly more different for the reasons we explained, I think that we will return to a more centrist or proliferation of more centrist governments.
Which I guess is a trend that, the two democracies, I guess, that we're both familiar with, the UK and the US, you tend to have 8 years Republican, 8 years Democrats, 8 years Republican, Labour for a while, Tory for a while, Labour for a while. So, it just swings and roundabouts.
Yeah. But even the UK, they're beginning to realize that probably when I've passed away, when your kids are a lot older, they will have more European and Scandinavian type coalition governments, because everything is not so black and white anymore. There's no evil Russia with nukes and the Americans trying to rush up to the to who's the quickest to the moon. Who's the quick? Now things are a lot more complicated, and you got as we both spoke, we've got a new kid on the block who who've got a lot of experience of not being a kid on the block, and they're just like, it's just history repeating itself, right? And therefore it affects their muscles. And so I think China's got have a lot of say in how things move along, and the way that they've dealt with the virus. That's quite interesting as well, because they can argue that the reason why they got through it because they've got a very authoritarian and bureaucratic government.
Absolutely. So I like that point, because that's quite different from what the previous point that you're making about nationalism. Many of the writers that have been commentators, observers that I've been looking at, they've been quite extreme. Like, this is going to be a swing to the right with a sort of Bannon, strong economic nationalistic push. And now, even in the midst of what's happening, we're seeing that even within the EU are closing borders to each other. And then in the midst of that, there's all this rhetoric. The Italian government ministers are standing up and saying, buy Italian. The French finance minister saying, buy French first, and Germany saying. So it does seem as if we've seemed to abandon the globalist experiment. But I take your point that it will be you oscillate all the way to the end, but then you come back to a more reasoned position when cooler heads prevail. So, things are up in the air. There's a lot of anxiety right now. So, yes, you swing to one side, but you'll eventually balance in a sensible position, because one needs to be pragmatic. I also want to acknowledge the point that you made about inequality being a lot of the drivers of social instability. And that somehow that governments, for example, in China, as they observe what has happened in Hong Kong, and governments elsewhere, they need to really keep that in mind. They need to be sensitive to social concerns because of the implications. So I just wanted to acknowledge those 2 points. Those are things that I haven't really explored within my own mind. So I'm grateful for that. What are your other thoughts as to factors that? So I like your way of saying, okay, I'm not going to predict what's going to happen, but these are factors that one needs to consider. So what other factors do you see that we need to consider?
Well, in my job, I find I do spend a lot of time trying to personally stay positive and keep people, motivated, and not, because you're just getting this overwhelming glut of bad news, minute after minute, day after day. It's just like that. And there is a very relevant argument about debt. The amount of corporate debt, and now governments are going into more debt. I read something that after the First World War, after the Second World War, Britain, their debt to GDP ratio was over 200%. And they only finished paying off
the United States, Go ahead.
That debt in 2006.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And now, we've got even more debt than we did in the last in 2008 crisis. So people that I do respect, I agree that this is a problem that we're kicking down the road. Which won't be my problem. I'm a baby boomer. This is like for the millennials and their kids.
Right.
I can quite easily see a scenario where, I don't know about hyperinflation, but because I had a professor, he used to equate debt like this. If you try and spend your way out of everything and print money ad infinitum, basically it's like having a brick tied to an elastic band. And that metaphor is inflation. So, and he said, doesn't know how you slice it, that will come back to bite you at some point in the future.
Yeah.
But for now, you know, a lot of what's going on is it's been politicized as well, right?
Yeah. So inflation for within the U.S. context, or just globally, or
globally? Yeah, globally. I mean, even Singapore, I think their debt to, and Singapore is very healthy.
Yeah.
Listen, even their debt to GDP is over 120%.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. I thought that to finance the present deficit, they were borrowing from past surpluses. So basically, they're kind of borrowing from themselves because they have a pile of cash, right? Kind of like Japan, right? Japan borrows from itself.
Yeah, but Japan, their GDP is over 200%. It's just it's just the way you want to classify it, but it's still debt.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. So, words of advice. If someone, as putting on your financial advisor hat, again, of course, no, this is not meant for advice for anyone to actually execute and therefore have a problem if something goes left or right. But just in general, what sort of positions or what sort of cautionary measures should someone be taking right now?
Okay, I like quotes. So there's a quote that says, an advisor with conviction is more powerful than 10 advisors with opinions.
Okay.
And my conviction is, I always go about this tiny little book, which was written around the Great Depression, and it's written in parables, and it's just, pay yourself first. Take a sliver of your income, and just pay yourself. Make sure you keep your debts under control, but just pay yourself first. And so if you want to save for a wedding, pay yourself first. You want to save for retirement, pay yourself first. You want to pay for school fees, pay yourself first. Because usually these things are always the last, and you see it as a bill when it shouldn't be. So it's just, I'm very into behavior and psychology, and it's just having that self-talk. What does money, saving, insuring, what does it truly mean to you? Like, I've got one client, and she's very, very skittish. She's a English lady. She's about 59, and she is petrified that she's not going to have enough money to retire.
Sure. Naturally, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, it all depends on how you want to retire. I said, you've got more than enough money to retire, but if you want to go swanning around, well, right now you can't, right? If you want to go swanning around on cruises and living, you're clear your money's not going to, but if you want to just take things nice and don't stress about anything, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Okay. Thank you very much. Wonderful. David, it has been a very, very stimulating and thought-provoking exchange.
So I spoke a little bit too much about myself at the beginning.
No, that's fine. That's because that provides context, right? Because, most people can't say that they've been in finance for 4 decades. Most people cannot say that they've been through Black Monday, the dot-com bubble, the great financial crisis, now this. So I think that creates context, and being honest, it creates credibility as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I'm a lot calmer than most.
Yeah. Hopefully that calm will become infectious as well. David, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, man, and I hope to see you back on these shores at not too